Part of the enjoyment of Satisfactory has been the journey from early access to full release, and now 1.1. And it occurred to me that many players joined the game much later in the development, that perhaps they don't know how different the game has become since its very first release. So today, to celebrate 1.1's release, I'm going to procrastinate, and instead of working on my next Let's Play videos where we're working on this, that I take a trip down memory lane and show you all our humble beginnings. And don't worry, the next playthrough videos are coming soon. Now, unfortunately, I've tried to access previous versions of the game, and despite spending hours working through SteamDB's manifests, I've been unable to get it to work. So instead, I will be going through the older Satisfactory release video footage for you. Now, one thing to bear in mind is that Satisfactory first hit early access on Epic as an exclusive back in March 2019, and looking back at the trailer, it was pretty bare bones to what we have now, but you will be able to spot some of the buildings which have now been reworked, such as the manufacturers, refineries, and even the first version of the splitters and mergers, which they soon remodeled in later updates. Now, a lot of the community at this point were actually really frustrated at the time of release because it was an Epic exclusive. But this was actually a huge boon for the developers. It allowed them to secure the funding that they needed to develop the game regardless of the game's success, which, do bear in mind, bar Factorio, up to this point, no factory game had been developed on this scale, and most players were just pining it off as a first-person Factorio clone. Something I feel the vast majority of the community can see as simply not true now. But following its release, we were soon treated to Update 1, which brought with it the conveyor elevator, as up until this point, conveyor elevators really just weren't a thing. We had to use these belt spirals for vertical transfer of resources in our factories. And following Update 1, we did end up having, unsurprisingly, Update 2, which brought with it the first rendition of trains and the original nuclear power plant. But it is important to note that at this stage of the game, we didn't have a way of recycling the waste that was generated, which meant players needed to store a lot of it in storage, which ended up radiating their worlds. And then Update 3 came, and with it soon after the release of Satisfactory to Steam. This was a year later. With it came liquids and a wave of destruction. As liquids weren't used prior, coal generators used solely coal, and fuel generators barrels of fuel. This meant that the power infrastructure of every save had to be reworked, and for many large saves this meant an inevitable restart. Now, this wasn't a bad thing, as it brought with it the awesome sink and shop, and with them a wealth of new buildables, giving our block-walled factories access to all new build pieces, from railings and diagonal ramps to things like foundation frames, wall conveyors, walled power points, windows, new items like the copper sheets, the FICSIT cart and mug, and hypertubes, which also arrived then too. Now, whilst Update 3 brought a lot to the table, looking back, we still had major pain points when it came to building. We just didn't know it back then. Lots of players, including myself, ended up looking towards mods to help, which wouldn't have been possible without the incredible modding community that supports Satisfactory. One of the biggest pain points that we had in Satisfactory was that everything had to be placed one item at a time. Every foundation, every wall had to be placed individually because there wasn't a way to zoop multiple foundations. Nor did we have blueprints in the game, and though some people excelled at building incredible factories, these were often smaller than what we now see in game, and often took a lot longer to produce. Soon after this, we had Update 3.5, which was a smaller update, but it added things that they wanted to add in Update 3. So, for example, the refineries were given their makeover that we see today, ladders were also added, and pipes were given valves alongside Mark II pumps and Mark II pipes, allowing us to send liquids much higher to the new fluid packager, which took some of the recipes from the original refineries specifically and reworked them, such as packaging and unpackaging fuel. Regardless of the small update, a lot of players returned to check out the new stuff, which raised the game's popularity and ultimately brought more players to our awesome community. And this happened with each update, and Update 4 was no different in that regard. But it was one of the larger updates, giving players a feast of new things to play about with. Tier 8 was added, which included plutonium production that gave us a way to recycle our nuclear waste. Nitrogen gas was also added, and with it the resource well pressurizer, as well as new items such as fused modular frames. Tier 7 brought with it a rework to aluminium production and batteries to make it easier for players to play around with the later game recipes, and we also received 2 new production buildables, the blender and particle accelerator. But these weren't the only new buildables that were added. Power received a revamp with power storage being added, as well as power switches and changes to power production, where now all power production buildings produce the max power possible at all times instead of scaling with factory consumption, with the exception of the biomass burners, which, did I mention, at this point were hand feed only? Another major pain point for us. This was also the update where lighting got added, allowing us to illuminate our worlds, and drains also came, although were only able to be run on batteries. Up until this point, the only way to traverse the world vertically was through the use of ladders and the jetpack, but with this we also saw the release of the zipline and the humble hoverpack, allowing us to build from above our factories. Now, possibly one of the biggest changes to the way that I play the game was in the following update, Update 5, where it made building a much better experience, more akin to what we have today with the introduction of zooping foundations and walls, along with the ability to soft clip certain items together. We were also given the ability to quick swap items that were being placed by pressing and holding E. And if that wasn't a big enough change for builders, this update also brought with it a heap of new buildables, with the addition of pillars, new wall types and heights such as the 1 meter wall. Now, beams were also added, allowing for freeform placement of items, and new roofs and walkways were added. This wasn't the only thing. We also had in this update the customizer, which removed the need for the color gun and turning petals into paint cartridges, and with it came the addition of different material types for your walls and foundations. So that's the concrete, the coated flooring, and the steel walkways. Not all beauty in the game comes with the building though. Various biomes at this point were given a rework with improvements to the overall design and lighting. And along with all those changes, trains received a major update with signals being added to the game and train collision as well, something that we all love to this day. But possibly the biggest change for me was the addition of signs. Originally planned for just labeling your factories, the community quickly realized that these could be used to give the appearance of lighting with much more control over their color and brightness, allowing players to get really creative and into the new build options that were now available in the game. And for those of you who love to play with friends, they also added dedicated server support, which allowed players to offload their computational power for larger builds or when playing with their friends for a better gameplay experience. And whilst we are on the subject of dedicated servers, if you are interested in playing Satisfactory 1.1 with friends using a dedicated server, then you'll be delighted to know that we're partnered with Low.ms, so you can get 20% off your first month using the code Totalxclipse and the link below. And better yet, you'll also be supporting the channel and the content that I produce to help me create more cool videos like this. So here we are. halfway through all the updates that led us to Satisfactory 1.1, but we still have a long way to go. Update 6 brought with it the Spire Coast and Swamp rework, and with the concentration on exploring in this update, new creatures were added along with new ammo types and the boombox. But the small size of the update was dwarfed by the big change that came in Update 7, which was the Blueprint Designer. With the addition of blueprints, players could now create large factory lines easily, or for players like myself, develop extremely detailed models that could be added to improve the aesthetic of our factories. And at this moment in time, the designer only came in the Mark 1 variant, much to the community's frustration, but all that was to change in 1.0, even if we were none the wiser to that. Some other small additions in Update 7 were the conveyor ceiling mounts that were added and could easily be dragged from the floor-based conveyors up to the ceiling in a single click, making it a much more flowing experience, and this happened with the pipes as well. This update also added alien DNA capsules to create coupons easier, and we received the peaceful game setting. But if you're wondering why the game looks so different between Update 7 and Update 8, for me that's because Update 8 added global illumination, a setting I haven't been able to play without ever since. This improved the way lighting works in Satisfactory and made it 100 times more beautiful in my opinion. And this was only possible due to the upgrade to Unreal Engine 5, and with it also came Nanite, which was used for the terrain around the world, improving optimization and vehicle chaos physics, which changed the way the vehicles behaved in game. On top of the move to Unreal Engine 5, vistas were added to give the map a sense of belonging within the world of Massage 2 ABB, and the Titan Forest was given a foliage overhaul, making it the beauty that it is today, and the same treatment was also given to the Pink Forest. This update also introduced the ability to destroy gas rocks with Nobelisk, which until this point were inhospitable locations of the map. Doing this allowed us to open our map up to new areas to build in. Speaking of factory building, the build system also received a huge update with the ability to nudge items horizontally, and this made item placement that much easier, but we still lack the ability to nudge items vertically. And up until this point, jetpacks only used fuel to run. However, we're now given the ability to use different fuels which excelled for different purposes. To help with managing factory power, we also had priority power switches, along with the new power towers for long distance power logistics. And this was also the implementation of the advanced game settings, allowing for free building and power free building, along with a few others. Update 8 also marked the end of the pre-1.0 development, with the push now being focused solely on getting the game to 1.0. This came with a heap of changes that you all know, such as the improved Pioneer look, Pioneer customization, new buildables, new items, improved blueprints, teleportation, quantum mechanics, which I've still not reached in my game, and the addition of the story and so much more. But each of the updates has been just a small part of the puzzle leading up to what Satisfactory is today. And yes, there are moments where Satisfactory is a little rough around the edges, but it is still a beautiful masterpiece when it comes to a game. And of course, they haven't stopped there. 1.1 has brought with it vertical nudging, finally, more build pieces, the ability to sample paste signs, new additions to trains, the photo mode, and a whole lot more. And it's great to see this isn't the end of Satisfactory either. With console release planned later this year, as well as a paid expansion and more free updates planned depending on how well the console release and expansion do, there is a lot to look forward to, and I can't wait to continue this journey onwards. And none of this would have been possible without the dedication from all the developers at CSS for making this happen. Now, I'm afraid this is just a quick look over the updates that led us to where we are now, but if you would like to see more of each of the updates, please do let me know which update you'd like to see and why in the comments below, and I'll see if I can get access to the files. And if you're wondering what to watch next, why not check out my Let's Play series of Satisfactory, as I've got some really cool builds on the way and we're going to be posting more Let's Play episodes in the coming months. Special thanks, as always, goes to all of our incredible supporters on Patreon, most notably our Lunar Eclipse patrons, Firefless, The Calamity, Ben, Star, and Seeker Kala, as well as our Blood Moon of the day, which today is the Southern Husky. Until next time, as always, ciao for now.